Morning, Mr. Hausman. How may I help you?
Hey, I'd like a cup of coffee.
Sure. Feel free to help yourself to our amazing vintage coffee machine in our lobby.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but you can't call a rusted tin jar with an old fading Sanka label on it vintage.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back once again to the No Vacancy podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. I am so delighted that week after week after week that you guys are coming to share some time with me, be it on your hotel commute while you're at the gym or just lying in bed at night hearing my lovely dulcet tones as you fall asleep in the evening. But seriously, I do want to thank each and every one of you. I'm so excited by how this show is building, and I'd like to request that maybe you give us a little review on iTunes over there, 5-star rating, a little review, say what value you get out of this show, all of that good kind of stuff. Also, be sure to read my articles and see me at the Hotel ROY events sponsored by Hotel Management. We're coming to Chicago and Atlanta and Charlotte, and a lot of good places to see you soon. And of course, follow me at Traveling Glenn on Twitter and Instagram. And next week, I'll be at the Global Business Travel Association shooting videos for Here to Stay TV. Boy, I sound awfully busy. Wow, it's pretty awesome to be this kind of busy. And most important, support my sponsor, Kevin Barry Fine Art. They do really great things, and they're going to do great things for you too. But another great thing, I want to introduce my guest for the first segment of this show, Mr. Andrew Cohan, Managing Director of Horwath in Miami. Andrew, how are you, sir?
Very well, Glenn. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you here today. So, it's interesting to me. You're a consultant. You spend over 100 nights a year in hotels. You're kind of like me in that sense that you really see it like it is, and you're able to take issues that other people are thinking about and really understand them from, I think, a broader point of view. How long have you been at this game?
Well, this is a second career for me, actually. My first career was in marketing and sales with AT&T. Mm-hmm. I used to sell services to foreign phone companies. And when that industry sort of fell apart, if you remember, you used to actually pay for long distance.
Yeah. I remember. It was such a great excuse not to have to call my parents. It's long distance. I can't afford it.
Exactly. Well, when that industry made a transformation, I decided I needed to do the same. And I left in 2004 and went back to school, got a master's in hospitality. And while I was in school, I realized that there's a whole industry of where real estate meets hospitality. And I had an affinity for that. And I spent about 9 years doing appraising and feasibility studies with HVS. Mm-hmm. And after developing my own niche and customer base, I decided to try it on my own, the old American dream.
Yeah, well, same thing here. I mean, I cut my teeth in the hospitality industry working for others, and then I said, hey, time for me to go off on my own. To me, I think the biggest thing was being worried about getting caught in somebody else's universe and not having control over my own destiny. So that was kind of the motivating factor for me to move on with my life and try to experiment with new things. And for you guys out there listening, now you got the No Vacancy podcast. So, I think it all worked out. Was that kind of what you were thinking there, Andrew? Time to, take destiny into your own hands?
Yeah, very much. Once I had moved into a niche of resorts and wellness and eco resorts, because I do a lot of work in Central America and the Caribbean and Mexico. I no longer wanted to be assigned work that might be, out of my sweet spot. So it seemed to make sense. And soon after I left, I joined the Horwath HTL, which is Hotel, Tourism, and Leisure network of companies, and that's been great to have partners around the world. So I'm very pleased. I've never worked so hard, but when it's your own thing that you're building, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, everyone tells me, hey, dude, take a break. But I refuse to because there's too much at stake, man. We gotta make our way. We gotta make things happen. And it doesn't really feel like, I'm working. And a lot of times I don't even feel like this is a job. I get to, talk about stuff all the time. So it's hard to say that I'm exhausted by getting to do something like this that we have such passion for. So kudos to us. We're very lucky guys, right?
That's right. That's what I tell my coworker all the time.
Yeah, so I'm really glad I get to speak with you today. And for my listeners out there, we're going to talk about several different issues that are of importance and interest right now in the hospitality industry on a general term. And the first one I wanted to talk about is this great article that you wrote for Hotel Management Magazine on the gay travel paradox and its palpable shift on hospitality. I'll put the article in the show notes for everybody as well. It was published last month. I found it really fascinating. I usually don't ask this kind of question, but before we get into this, I do want to point out you are a gay man. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay, because I want to just kind of put this into the right perspective, if that makes sense to you. Right? So, tell me a little bit about why you're curious as to whether or not LGBT hotels are necessary at this point in time.
Well, as an analyst, I'm always clipping articles and filing them away and, keeping up on different trends. And I've seen a few articles in the past year or two about primarily gay or gay-friendly hotels that are actually struggling to keep going.
Right.
I think it was in the article I mentioned the case of one in Maui. And, in my own lifetime, I've debated and from time to time decided, well, should we go to a gay place or should we go to a mainstream place? Right. And, some of my own development as a gay person really took place in some of these destinations. When I was the age of some of my peers in the industry today who are in their mid-20s, I could go to these places and it was sort of like Disneyland or, Oz, because it was a little bit of an alternate universe.
I could imagine, because what's happening is in this era, you kind of probably felt guarded and protected about who you actually were as an individual. And then you go to a place and suddenly you step through those doors and it opens up and you could be your organic self. Yes?
Exactly. And I think it was Memorial Day weekend. I live in Miami Beach in a big condo building that's been there for a long time. So there's a big mix of ages and types of people and families and singles, et cetera. And around 4 p.m, I went down to the pool, and there were a group of about a dozen guys in their 20s who had obviously been there since noon or earlier, drinking and having fun, and kind of whooping it up in a way that we might have done in somebody's backyard pool in private. But, I couldn't picture myself at 25 years old sort of taking over a condo pool with, giggling with my gay buddies.
Right. I mean, that would have been such an alien thought to you. I bet you, it's not even part of the dialogue that you probably had, the internal dialogue that you had at that point in your life.
Right. I mean, it's on the one hand, it's wonderful. I mean, I'm married now. I wouldn't have dreamed of that 35 years ago. So I started talking to these guys about their travel habits, because I said, I've been thinking of writing an article. I've been reading about, whether there's a need for gay destinations or not, and whether they can survive. When you guys travel, what do you do? How do you, and basically I got some insights about, if they were in a group like they were that afternoon in the pool, right, they pretty much didn't care where they were because they could, feel safe in numbers. Just, it's kind of a basic principle. But they said depending on where they go, whether they're on the coasts or in the interior of the country, they might behave differently. If they had been to a few Asian destinations and felt like they didn't really get the culture or the lay of the land, so that if they stayed in a hotel that was particularly advertised to the gay community or was gay friendly, they could sort of have the gay concierge, right, of telling them where to go, where not to go, what to do, what not to do, what's acceptable on the street, what isn't, things like that. So, and then I asked them about cruises, because that's that's like a totally different world. It is, and it's, having been with my partner on a cruise, on one of the big brand cruises years ago. We didn't really want to sit at a table of 8 people with, 4 couples from Cincinnati and,
Right.
Talking about their kids and just things that aren't our style.
Yeah.
And it's not as much fun to be on the dance floor when, there's 3 gay couples and 300 straight couples.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yet on the other hand, the gay cruise is sort of intimidating as well, with 2,000 men taking over a boat on the Caribbean.
Sounds kind of fun, though.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
New topic. All right, so I want to go back to the hotel thing a little bit. Now, I can't say I completely understand this market as a heterosexual guy, but I have always thought that it's a really terrific niche to appeal to, right? You got your family reunions group, you've got, your other types of groups that are out there, but I think this particular category is one that hoteliers should really be focusing on in general, because at least for my world, most gay men that I know seem to, them and their partners seem to have a lot more cash flow than a lot of straight couples. So they're ready to spend. And I would add also that I'm seeing a lot of change shifting away, it seems, almost from gay-only hotels in some major cities. Specifically in New York, there was the Out Hotel, which seems to have gone away right now from being gay-only to more of a generic kind of brand. And I think there was a hotel in Vegas as well, across from Hard Rock, that used to be gay, that's now kind of gone to everybody. So you think this is kind of a trend that we're going to be seeing now, or where are we at kind of right now, and how would you try to appeal towards a gay audience if you were going to be owning a hotel or had a hotel?
Well, I've seen a good example in Curacao in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Of course, Curacao is was a Dutch territory. Now it's an independent country. So along with the Dutch culture, it's, very open and progressive.
Right.
But there was a small hotel across from the Hilton and Marriott called the Florist Suites that used to be pretty much exclusively gay.
Right.
And I think and they still have their Friday night cocktail hour, which is sort of the gay gathering spot on the island on Friday nights, mm-hmm. giving them a plug. But they changed it to adults only.
Right.
And I think, and they're doing just fine. And I think that's a sensible compromise.
Yes.
The truth is, many gay people are totally comfortable most places that they go.
Right.
They don't want to be gawked at or looked at when they're on vacation, but in an all adult atmosphere, and now we can never generalize anymore because gay families have screaming kids just like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and that's a totally valid reason to be annoyed at a gay family as opposed to the other reasons that are old school ways of being annoyed by gay people. I get it. It makes sense. And I'm curious also, it seems to me that generally speaking, although I find recently we seem to be taking as a society some steps backwards, but that aside, in general, I find that people that do not conform to the heterosexual traditional lifestyle just seem to be more accepted in America these days, thereby not necessarily needing a haven like you relied on in those early days of your youth. Is that an accurate assessment of how you feel?
Well, yeah. I mean, I often think about, what if I were 20 today
right.
and had it to do over, right? And, I didn't have the president of Apple to be a role model.
Right.
I didn't have Neil Patrick Harris to be a role model.
Right.
I didn't have Olympic athletes as role models. Mm-hmm. They were there.
Yeah. Right.
They were certainly there all around, but in very good camouflage.
Right.
And, today you can watch, what's that show on cable, Billions or Billionaire, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a stockbroker who's like, my pronoun is this and my gender is whatever, and this is how you should talk to me. Call me they.
Right.
And, and if people are watching that on TV, in Iowa as much as they are in San Francisco, we're all exposed to things. Now, Some people may not want to be exposed, but the fact is, when something's not odd anymore, it becomes acceptable.
Right.
I think we all, that I'm doing an interview like this today and couldn't fathom having done 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, amazing, right?
Yeah, just kind of speaks to, to your own self be true, whatever your truth is,
And that's another thing that I'm seeing. And I don't want to get all philosophical and stuff. This is a hotel industry related show. Yeah. But the fact is, my children grew up very differently than I grew up. I grew up in a house that that embraced everybody being their own, but not to the degree now, because I think my parents made a conscious decision to do that. Where I grew up now, it's whoever you are or whatever you are is just simply irrelevant, and that shows through in my children's generation. They don't see race or religion or sexuality as a benchmark for anything other than, they focus on, are you a good person that I want to be friends with or not? And that's where it ends. And that's why I love how far society is really moving, regardless of what certain politicians are trying to do.
Yeah, and from the perspective of a hotel, there are some basic decencies or politeness, right? With hospitality, you're supposed to be polite.
Yeah.
So, and you don't know anymore what the relationship is of the people staying in your room.
Yeah, very true.
So if you leave a bowl of fruit and say, Mr. and Mrs. Cohan, you should have looked first.
Right.
Or Mr. Cohan and guest, or dear guest.
Mm-hmm.
But when I get these assumed alumni requests from the college I went to saying Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Cohan. Well, they don't know there's not a Mrs. Cohan.
Yeah.
Why did they assume there was?
Right. And I also want to point out that bowl of fruit is not a gay slur, just so everybody knows.
You're really bad.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, I think that there's still some training that we have to do to reorient people to think that way, because we are no longer in a quote unquote traditional type of society, right? It's very interesting to me. Now, I wanted to do a little research on this particular topic, and I happened to get a haircut today, and my hairstylist happens to be a gay man, so I asked him some of these questions as well, and he seems to be following exactly what you're saying. Sometimes they want to have that all gay experience, him and his boyfriend, but other times they're happy to just be staying at a mainstream property. So I think that's kind of where we're headed to right now. Gay folks are going to be treated continually as, I think, a particular niche group on which you can leverage to earn a lot of money, but in other times it's just irrelevant. Is that a good way to wrap up that particular topic there, Ann?
Very good.
All right. Woo! All right, we got through that. I got to say, I felt a little uncomfortable throughout the whole thing, because I always feel like I got to put up on my politically correct type of statements, as opposed to being who I really am, when I'm with my friends off the microphone, if you know what I mean. So
yes, and since you say that, It was important for me. Usually, I write industry articles that are very factual, mm-hmm. and I draw my conclusions from a bunch of facts and sometimes an opinion or state so. For this piece, I really had to make it personal, because people certainly want to know. I mean, people who know me and my friends or care about me, they may have curiosity, but they don't want to offend, intrude, or impose.
Right.
So they don't ask me, well, what was it like when everybody was dating girls and you weren't? Or what, how did you experience this and that? And it's sort of like walking in a minefield, like you say. So rather than I assume that people are curious, and therefore I tell my experience, and they don't have to ask.
I love it, because I want to have a little bit of this conversation here, because it is such an important topic. But for me, it's kind of like I want to learn. I want to understand some of these things that I may have questions about, but I also don't want to come off in the wrong spirit when I ask those particular questions, right? So it's cool that we're able to have this awesome open dialogue, especially since we've never had a conversation with each other before. Usually this is something that that would take place after a couple of whiskeys at the bar, right? So thanks for being so open and honest. And now let's move to another trend I think that we're seeing out there. Wellness. I talk about wellness a lot. Hyatt has bought Miraval this year. I think it's a huge step forward. How do you see it?
I see it as a logical step in the evolution. Most wellness resorts, if you look at the leaders in the industry, whether it be Canyon Ranch, Miraval, Rancho La Puerta, etc., Calavi, many of them were family businesses or an individual had a vision and built a resort. Now, however, wellness travel is a huge, huge segment of the industry. People want to, and it's not so much I'm going away, so let me eat a big steak and smoke a cigar. It's I'm going away, I have time to take care of myself, which I is always on my list at home, but I wish I could do a little more. So the in this category, we saw around about in the last 3 to 5 years of funding coming in, right? We had Pegasus behind Six Senses.
Yep.
Banyan Tree got Chinese financiers, etc. And now what we're finding is in the same way that Hyatt did their agreement with Playa Hotels because they saw that, or I'm guessing that because they saw that the all-inclusive sector was something where they didn't have homegrown talent. So let's align with a company like Playa, who's great at all-inclusive, but doesn't have our brand recognition or distribution, right?
Yeah.
So that was a great marriage. In the same way, I think Hyatt was humble enough to say, we're not a wellness company. We're a hotel company. Miraval is a great asset in the hotel space, and their last ownership was just in the beginning of an expansion mode, right? Where there would be, maybe the plan was to have both Miraval destination resorts and Miraval spas at other resorts. And I think they have 3 or 4 in the pipeline at the time of the transaction. So combining that business sense with just the general trend of branding in the future, I think we can see, like we've seen with Accor, stretching out into things that are really more, even farther afield than picking up a wellness brand. I think that the giant brand families want to become a consumer brand more like Nike, right? It represents lifestyle. I can relate to Nike whether I happen to be running right now or watching TV. And at some point, maybe Hyatt I can have a relationship with, not just when I'm in a hotel, but maybe they have a Miraval at the Hyatt down the street, and I can be a member of Miraval as my local gym. Who knows?
Right.
But,
so let me tie together both of these topics that we've been talking about today. I think what we're really talking about is the proliferation of hotels focusing on niche audiences. Is that kind of the overarching theme that I think we're seeing right now in the hospitality business?
It's very important. As I do research in different areas, and I started out in valuation, and in valuation, you're valuing real estate, and the keys to operating better or more efficiently, more profitability this year, which eventually leads to value. A lot of that is coming from soft programming, again, geared to niche markets. And as we look at the kinds of companies that are good at this, these wellness resorts, whether it be at the very high end, like a Canyon Ranch or Miraval, where people are spending $10,000, $15,000 a week. At the next level down, you have some spa and springs resorts, some of which have been clients of mine, where the ADR might be $250 or $350 a night, but the spend per occupied room night is more like $600 because in addition to that $250, they're spending another $250 at the great restaurant, because when you're in a bathrobe and doing spa treatments, you don't feel like driving into town for lunch, so you eat there. And then you take your treatments, and that's another, if you take one a day, that could be $150 to $200. And if you're a couple, it really adds up. So you have these hotels with $250 or $300 room rates actually showing revenue of $600 and $700 per occupied room night, which is
pretty darn good. I think that's kind of the dream, and it's one of the issues that I've been talking about, on stage, writing custom articles for people, all of that kind of stuff. It's really not about the ADR anymore because we've been at this record rate for so long now. It's about overall spend, how much people are going to spend on your property, and by focusing on niche audiences, I think you can make that work a little bit better. I've been an unabashed fan of what Hard Rock Hotels has been doing. I've been an unabashed fan of what Margaritaville Holdings have been doing with their hotel division, because both groups fundamentally understand who their audiences are and then craft a property and programming from which to not just generate room nights, but to generate superior on-property spend. And I think for all of you folks listening out there, it's a great lesson to learn about how we can keep these profits going regardless of whatever people are telling you what the state of the hospitality industry might be.
Yeah, and along those lines, I'm in Denver today, but I just flew out from Orlando, where I spent 3 days north of Orlando at a place called The Villages. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Of course I know The Villages. As a matter of fact, I have a buddy of mine who's very keen to open up a cannabis store as soon as it becomes legal there. He thinks it's going to be a great business over at The Villages. And incidentally, a little known fact, I think they have one of the highest rates of STDs in the country. So,
you
say
Go
Villages.
That's a little known fact, but everybody I've mentioned The Villages to tells me that fact.
Hey, man, I think I'm going to retire. I might retire there myself. Of course, I might have to be a little bit careful, but I'm just kidding. I think it's great that, again, that's a niche audience, and Margaritaville is doing the same thing by building a community that focuses on those people. But sorry, I didn't mean to step on your point. Share
not at all. Not at all. You made a funny one. But what I found there, they have bus tours so you can learn about the community. They have a 4-day familiarization thing or indoctrination, whatever your perspective is. But one of the things that the tour leader casually said was, we have 2,300 groups and activities. I said, 2,300? Yeah. And he said, or clubs and activities, he said. And they have a newspaper there daily that talks about, what there is to do. And the truth is there are so many, just from radio control. Well, we have the motorized sailboat, remote control sailboat on the lake group. We have the drone group. We have the remote control airplane group. And he just went on and on and on. Yeah. And I happen to be 58 years old, and the average buyer there is 63 years old. Mm-hmm. And my associate, who's 35, was laughing at me the whole time because they have music pumped out through the streetlights everywhere you go.
Awesome.
And it's, it's not loud, but it's always there in the background. And it's basically every album I had in 9th grade.
Hey, that's awesome. I think it's great. For me, I happen to be a hippie jam band, fish head kind of guy. So if they opened up a retirement community that focused on that, I would definitely want to take a look at that, because we all want to be with like-minded people, and it's great that there's such Villages is such a huge place that everybody could find the niche that applies to them and find that companionship and relationships that they're looking for. It's great.
No, exactly. But the underlying point was they know who their customer is. In 10 minutes whether it's for you or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you get there. And they just really cater to, it's really all about the programming.
Right.
And
yeah, for sure. But one more question I have for you on the Villages. When you are legally required to go live there, what kind of car is your little mini golf cart going to look like?
It's going to be purple.
Yeah. I love it. All right, we're almost hitting our mark to close this out. We had so many more things to talk about. Andrew, I'm gonna have to have you come back on a future show so we could talk about some more of these issues. But before we actually wrap up here, anything more that you find is important to say about some of the topics that we've been talking about in terms of finding that particular audience and being really rabid to focus on it?
Well, I think that a lot of the niche players really live and breathe this stuff in terms of, the programming and knowing my client. The big hotel brands certainly talk the talk all the time and have great examples of how they have changed to get to know their customer better and have, added brands to specifically target those niches more appropriately. But I think there's something, and never having worked for a hotel operator or a branded operating company, I'm an analyst looking from the outside, but it seems like if my career was all about getting measured on OC and rate, then I'm not going to manage these other areas as forcefully. An example, a brand, I stayed at their hotel in Mexico City, and their brand principles are all about arts and culture and what's happening locally. I was there in May, and I clicked on what's happening in Mexico City, and it told me what was happening on November 2nd and November 4th. And I don't know if that was November from last year or November from next year, because it was May. And obviously, if the revenue manager was asleep at the switch for 24 hours, his or her job would be at risk.
Right.
But the person who has to update the brand pillar of arts and culture and what's happening in the city, I just logged on today to see if it was still there. They hadn't updated it still since May.
That's a really great point. I gotta tell you, I go on some of these websites and they'll be like, coming fall 2015. And I'm like, seriously? Do you guys not check your website every once in a while? So that's a great lesson to come away with from today's show as well. Make sure that your websites are up to date. You understand what you're doing. Think about the overall spend of what your guests can possibly do on your site. And think about some of those niche audiences that you could appeal to. Not necessarily building an entire property or a retirement community for those folks, but how you can appeal towards those audiences that are already willing to come to your hotel and maximize that revenue. I want to thank Andrew for being here today, and if you need to find him, Mr. Cohan, Managing Director, Horwath Hospitality Travel and Leisure, how can we find you? Shameless plug time, Andrew.
Oh, very good. A. Cohan, that's Cohan, at horwathhtl.com or horwathhtl.com, and look for the Miami office.
Excellent. I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank all of you guys for listening, and stay tuned, because after this, I have the CEO of Diamond Resorts, Mike Flaskey. They're a massively large timeshare company. We're going to get into that issue, and you're going to learn all about why timeshare is really a compelling story for those guys. Stick around, and thanks so much.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. And if you're like me, then I know that you love terrific art. Art that creates a sense of place. Art that tells a story of where you are. Art that adds a level of detail that you can't get anywhere else. And great folks that do this, Kevin Barry Fine Art Associates. You can find them online at kevinbarryfineart.com, and I highly encourage that you check them out. One recent project that I'm totally in love with is the Fairmont, Washington, D.C., where they created a custom project with a local artist, and they created some of this on site. They actually created a multi-dimensional wall sculpture from gold blocks, which is an abstracted map grid of the Washington, D.C. area. It's got different elevations to it and looks absolutely fantastic. It was done along with Deborah Forrest and Amanda Jackson of Forrest Perkins, which is now Perkins Eastman. And they all work together to create this fabulous new look. So if you want to create a fabulous new look for your hotel, or if you just love great art, check out kevinbarryfineart.com or give him a call at 310-945-2655. Let him know Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, so I don't take enough advantage of timeshare, but I've been following the business for a really long time. And I've been wondering, lately, Howard Nussbaum, who's the head of ARDA, he's the association that oversees everything, says I'm allowed to call it timeshare again. I thought it was supposed to be vacation ownership. So to get to the bottom of this particular topic, I brought none other than the CEO of Diamond Resorts on right now. They have over 370 properties, Mr. Michael Flaskey. So, Michael, I just want to get right into it. What is this? Is it timeshare these days? Is it vacation ownership? I don't know. I'm confused.
Well, hey, Glenn. Thanks for having me on your show, buddy. Hope you're doing good.
I'm doing great, except for this problem that is befuddling to me, because I thought, I'm an easily trained guy. I've been saying this vacation ownership, but now all of a sudden somebody tells me that Howard's saying we should go back to saying timeshare. I check your website. You're very clear about it being timeshare. So what's the scoop on that?
Well, it's 100% timeshare,
yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
In the early days, it was timeshare, and as you probably are well aware of, as many of your folks in the audience are, it didn't always start out with a grand reputation. And as the branded companies, the hotel companies started entering the space, Disney, Marriott, Starwood, they tended to gravitate more towards vacation ownership, and they thought that was kind of more of a branded spin on it. And what's really happened, though, is that the shared economy, through Airbnb and through, fractional jets and quarter share high-end residence clubs, has really validated itself. Right. And so, at the end of the day, timeshare really doesn't have the same stigma attached to it that it did in the early days. And so we're proud at Diamond Resorts to call it timeshare.
That's pretty cool. That being said, my parents did get a nifty camera in 1981, so that was exciting when they went to a presentation.
Well, it's better than the car phone.
Yeah.
At one point they were giving away car phones, and you thought you were getting a phone for your car, and you got to the end, and you got a phone that was shaped like a car.
Oh, that is so painful. Oh, man. So you've seen it all, because you've been around the business for a long time. You worked, you had senior executive roles with Starwood Vacation Ownership and Fairfield Resorts, which is now Wyndham. So you've seen a lot of changes out there. What's kind of the sense that you're getting right now on the state of the business and how your customers are starting to perceive it? And I guess it's changed a little bit now that you're mentioning the Airbnb effect.
Yeah, you know what? The Airbnb doesn't affect us.
I meant the shared economy, really, not that product.
Right. The shared economy has been fantastic for the industry. Look, the industry is doing extremely well. During the downturn, 2008, 2009, the sales in the industry really were down slightly, but not a lot. But what happened, we couldn't access the asset-backed securitization market, so a lot of the developers out there, couldn't monetize their receivables and couldn't get the funding to run the day-to-day business. So that taught the industry a lot of valuable lessons. Those people that survived started running the business more like an entrepreneur would for cash, and they were a lot less dependent on the ABS markets. And so the industry is really well discipline now, where a lot of the independent developers maybe weren't before the downturn. And from the consumer standpoint, I mean, look, you can go talk to Howard, you mentioned his name earlier, and ARDA will tell you that I think just over 6% of the eligible households in North America own the product. So when you look at the demographic out there, or the universe of people that don't own the product, there's a lot of runway left for the industry.
Yeah, and you would think that that's not the case because you see it growing so aggressively over time. But when you throw out a number like only 6% have bought that are eligible to it, it really reframes the entire argument. But even during those dark days of the down economy, my understanding was that existing properties were still doing well because they already had the owners, and those folks insisted in going away on vacation. Is that what you saw at Diamond Resorts?
No, there's absolutely no question that's an accurate statement.
Right.
I mean, this is this business is a lot like a subscription model.
Right.
People own the product. It's a prepaid vacation. They've already paid their real estate taxes, insurance in the form of their HOA dues, and so they go use it. And what we learned in the downturn was we learned that even if the economy was difficult, people still want their vacations, and frankly, they need their vacations. And so they tended to vacation, even in that as it related to timeshare because it was prepaid.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense, and people love those timeshares. Everyone I know that owns a timeshare is an evangelist, it seems, for the timeshare business. And then I see guys like you on your side of the business, and I see almost an unparalleled passion. You guys love this timeshare world. It's so interesting and different than the hospitality side, where I cut my teeth.
Well, I mean, in the end, if you look at our company, we make our EBITDA, really from three verticals. We have a vacation ownership sales piece of it, and then we have a financing piece of it. And then we really are in the hospitality management business. Our Hams division, where we own and manage, I think, 109 properties around the world, is incredibly profitable. It's very predictable. It's a recurring revenue stream in the form of these evergreen contracts. And look, we've got 9,000 people now around the globe that wake up and figure out how to make our 500,000 plus Diamond Resorts owners have the absolute greatest vacation they can have every day.
Wow, that's a lot of people, and it sounds like a tough job. But one of the things that you are focusing on is trying to make it easier, the sales process more customer centric, because I think that's, I would argue, probably the biggest pinch point the industry has had. Everyone loves it on the other side, but the getting to that point always seemed a little bit more challenging.
You know what? You're 100% correct. I mean, if you think about it, the sales process, traditionally has been disliked.
Right.
It is a direct marketed and a direct sold product. People didn't, wake up today and say, I think I'm going to go down here and, buy a timeshare. It was something that typically they were invited in through an incentive.
Right. I mean, I'm walking down on the strip. Somebody says, "Hey, why don't you go do this?" In Las Vegas, I'm out in front of SeaWorld, and someone says, "Hey, go do this right now, and we'll give you a free ticket." Right. So it's not really. I'm not coming at it from the point of view where I'm completely open. So I'm going to probably be more guarded and confused about the whole thing to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're certainly not coming in there to buy anything. Yeah. I mean, we know, I grew up on the sales side of the business, and, as a part of that training process, we know that the guests come in with a very high degree of tension because they really don't know what to expect, and they're really there for a free gift. And they've kind of said to each other, hey, under no circumstance are we going to buy anything. So you kind of start off that way, and then in 90 minutes, if you did your job, you're getting an average transaction, in our case, of $26,000, from a family that woke up to go to SeaWorld. So, it is a very, interesting process. But I will say at Diamond Resorts that, we have worked really hard to kind of, I would say, revolutionize the sales process. We have what we call our Events of a Lifetime platform, where in 2017 we will do over 3,000 of these special events, which include, going with Reggie Jackson to a New York Yankees game, going to a Washington Redskins game with Mark Rippon.
Nice.
We have 4 country music artists, Cole Swindell, Lee Bryce, Jana Kramer, and Colt Ford.
You lost me on those names, but sounds great.
Yeah, well, they're a country artist, and they do very well, and they identify with our audience.
That's amazing.
Our owners.
I get it.
That's who they.
Yeah, what you're telling me is you're really delivering the type of connections and experiences that your target audience craves. Hey, if you were to do the same thing with a hippie jam band, I would be all over that exact thing. So let's work something out, Mike, for you to do something with Fish, maybe next summer tour or something like that, and we'll put together a big thing. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail what you were saying. Go ahead, please.
No. Fair enough. But so look. Anyway, we so through these experiential vacations, we give our guests the opportunity to kind of opt in to go do one of these cool events of a lifetime, and then of course they agree on the back end to come in and learn more about Diamond Resorts. But by that point in time, we've earned the right to be able to present to them, and we've gotten that tension level that I was speaking to earlier down.
Right.
And we see the results both in the complaints I get letters, people apologizing because they couldn't afford to buy, or the timing wasn't right because they had a child maybe that had a divorce and they were helping right now. And so the worm has really turned as it relates to how we handle the sales process.
Right. That's really interesting, and I love how you're connecting it to modern customer trends with that whole sense of creating a rarefied experience. Because one of the things I do when I do speeches on the road is I talk about, connecting with the guests in those very special ways. And you're connecting with your audience by giving them access to stuff that they could never have done without you. So now, not only did you create goodwill in that moment, but forever they will associate that particular artist with the Diamond Resort's name at the same time. So they'll always go hand in hand. Pretty interesting move there.
Well, yeah, well, and to just piggyback on what you're saying too, it kind of helps us, with the new generation. I mean, the millennials. I mean, it's not so much about the sticks and bricks, or it's not so much about the traditional accommodations as it is about the experience. And so what we're doing is we're packaging all that into one, and we continue not just through the sales process and the onboarding process, but once they become members and once they are in the Diamond system and are a part of the lifetime subscription, we have things that they can do, as a part of the club that are these once in a lifetime climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, a cruise around the world. I mean, there's just so many things that we put out there that are unique over and above just traditional vacations, using their points to go to the Masters. So yeah, that's what we do. We focus on that very thing.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I like what you say about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, because you're right. We are in the experience economy, as someone has dubbed it. I just like using that phrase, and wish I coined it myself. And by doing the whole sales approach by saying, hey, you could have these experiences, as opposed to here's a static resort that you could stay at and they have some activities for the kids. And sure, you could go to another resort somewhere else, but it's kind of the same thing. You're really just setting the stage for them to have vacations that they always envisioned having that we never thought of doing 20, 30 years ago, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's kind of a one-stop shop. What is one of the other things that has changed? You asked the question early on about, vacation ownership versus timeshare, et cetera. And I kind of took us back through the history and gave you the why behind that. But the product has changed as well. In the early days, it was a fixed week product where, your parents or my parents would have come in and they would have bought, week number 28, which is the 4th of July, and they owned that week in Williamsburg, Virginia, in that unit, and that's what they came back and used. Or maybe they could use an exchange company and trade a week for a week. Well, what's happened now is the industry, has migrated to this points currency, which gives you so much more flexibility. With this points currency, in essence, you basically have a currency that you can go out and if you have a 2-bedroom that you own and it's worth 50,000 points, but you only need a 1-bedroom and you don't want to go during the prime season, you may get a 1-bedroom for 5,000 points. So you may be able to take 50,000 points and get 3, 5, 6, 7 weeks of vacation a year, or you may break it up on a per night basis and go 2 or 3 nights at the time, where that currency gives you the flexibility to get change back, as they say.
Yes, which is great, and it allows you to vacation differently in different years as well. I've become familiar with the Pointsbased systems. My brother-in-law has week 50 in Aruba for the last 40 years. So while he's got that,
there you go.
I've got other friends that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to spend a week in Hawaii this year, but I'm going to spend 2 days in the city and then 3 days doing something else. And it all depends on that time of year. So I know guys that have bought in at the most expensive time of the year, so then they can do, they could like double, triple that time in other locations at other times of the year and create a lot of different experiences just on those same points. It's much more flexible, as you said. And do you think, Mike, though, that people are actually using all of these days? Because if you don't own a timeshare, I get the sense that you forego a lot of your vacation days. That's my life story. But if you do have a timeshare, I feel like you felt like you paid for it. You got to use it.
Well, I'll tell you this. In Europe, I know they use their time. They're really committed to their vacations over there.
I'm jealous
and it's something
of them.
that
They're like, what do you mean you work between July and August? I'm like...
Yeah. Well, in North America, we actually have started seeing a little bit of uptick in people starting to use their vacation time a little more. But we have been on a downward spiral for sure. I mean, if you go back, into, say the 80s and 90s, I think North America, the average vacation was like, 20.3 days or something like that. And that people, would use. And I mean, it's gone down, and I'm telling you, it's gone down a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's down into like the 16-day range.
Yeah, I took 20.3 hours last year. That's how bad it got. It's great, though, that people are starting, that they do use their time off. I just wish that people figured out how to incorporate work and time off more, because you say here your team was actually nice enough to give me a couple of vacation data points, and here it says 272 billion vacation liability sitting on balance sheets. Man, that's a lot of untaken days. That's what a pity.
Yeah, and that's actually up 21%, I think, since like 2015.
Yeah.
So I mean, we need to do something about that.
Yeah. So, okay, how do you have any ideas on how we could get people to take more vacations? Obviously, by timeshare points over at Diamond Resorts, but outside that in particular, how can we get people to say, "Hey, enough is enough"? Be like the French, take off 6 weeks at a time.
Yeah, I don't think culturally we're going to get there, but I will. But look,
how about more long weekends?
Yeah. Well, here's the sad part.
Yeah.
The sad part in the answer to your question is as follows. Most of the time people figure it out, but they figure it out when it's too late. And what I mean by that comment is that vacations are not a luxury. People think still that vacations are a luxury. Vacations are a necessity, but it's not until somebody goes to the doctor and finds out that their blood pressure's off the chart, or they find out that they have had a heart issue, that all of a sudden they go, "Hey, you better take it easy. You better slow down." And then all of a sudden you see people, and we see it in our company every day on the sales tables, where the wives in particular are looking at the husband and they're going, "You know what? You better start to slow it down a little bit." And when people have that medical event, they tend to reflect inwardly a little more, and they tend to slow down a little bit and say, "You know what, we better get out here and do this." But it really shouldn't be that way. But like I say, the Europeans got it figured out. That's just culturally the way it is from the time they were kids. And then when they get in the workforce, they carry it on. But hey, at the end of the day, all we can do is continue to put the awareness piece out there, and hope that it improves. And we are seeing, marginal improvement for sure.
Yeah, and it'll be great if we all just took a little bit more time off. Except for me, I'm going to continue to deliver a show every single week, because that's my blessing and my curse there, Mike. So tell me a little bit about some of the destinations that you're in that you think are interesting, perhaps, and where you might be heading to in the future. Some of those up and coming types of places.
Yeah, well, look, if you take Diamond Resorts, as a whole, just to kind of give your listeners a little background, it is really, the company was very acquisitive, and the company was formed out of really 9 different acquisitions and kind of put together over time. But we've got some remarkable locations on the West Coast. I mean, in Las Vegas, we've got 3 beautiful resorts. We've got a beautiful resort in Lake Tahoe. I was just there this weekend. I was in Las Vegas last week, both unbelievable locations. Then we've got Hawaii. We're on the island of Maui. We're on the island of Kauai. We're getting ready to open in Kona. And then you come back and you kind of start to, work your way back east a little bit. And, we've got a beautiful spot in Branson, Missouri. We've got Williamsburg, Virginia. We've got Virginia Beach, Virginia. We've got 5,000 beautiful oceanfront units in 5 different resorts on the Mid-Atlantic coast. Then you come down into Florida, and we're very big in Orlando, the vacation capital of the world, around all the theme parks, on down into St. Martin. And then when you jump over into Europe, we've got places in the UK, but most of our stuff is really in Southern Europe. You get down into the Canary Islands, the Greek islands, kind of that Costa del Sol region of Spain. So really it's a wide variety. There's 455 of them for those that are interested all around the world.
Wow. That's a lot of places. Is Kauai still a best kept secret? It seems like a lot of people have found out about it, other than the filmmakers of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you know what? Kauai is really cool, and it's the Poipu side in particular, where we're located, I love. Princeville's nice too, but it is undoubtedly still a hidden gem of the Hawaii Islands. You go through there, and it's not uncommon to see chickens running across the road and wild boar, and and then you come over the hill, and all of a sudden, there's the beautiful ocean, and you're like, whoa, this is cool.
That's awesome. I got to go to that place. But funny enough, I'd love to go there, but I also kind of want to see Branson. Have you been to Branson before?
I have. I've been there many times. Branson is a really popular location for us, and if anybody that likes music in particular would love Branson. It's
fascinated by
full
that
of
place.
Theaters and
Yeah,
it's very unique, and I'll tell you one of the great things about Branson. The average age of our owner that comes through Branson is probably north of 70 years old, and you see all of these people full of energy and full of life out there enjoying their golden years, and they continue to buy more product because they're at the point in their life where they have the disposable income to spend it, and they have the time to get out there and use it, and they love it. I mean, Branson is actually a really cool spot.
Yeah, I have a feeling that I would I hear a lot of things about it, and I'm so curious about it. And I think that while it's not geared towards my demographic, New York Gen Xer, I think I would find it really fascinating, the whole experience about how they cater to a very specific audience and seem to pull it off in an absolutely fascinating type of way. And
it's very much a drive to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think we've set a good case for all of that, but you mentioned like grandma and grandpa, and my suspicion is with them and their timeshare, they're probably mirroring the trend I see in the greater hospitality industry and wanting to do multi-generational family travel. Are you seeing a lot of that, and how are they experiencing their vacations, and what do you do to make them all feel special?
Yeah, well, first off, they love it. And as I said earlier, they're at that point in their life where, their gift is time and money because they've worked their whole lives. And so that's exactly what they love to do. They love to, take their families and bring them in and do these large reunions and this sort of thing. And one of the cool features of the Diamond product is we have what's called the Diamond Luxury Selection, which you can actually take your points and you can go get a beautiful home out of not on one of our traditional properties, but you might go get a 10-bedroom home in Vail, right? And you can do every few years they can take their points and they can do this really kind of dream vacation where they can bring all the kids and grandkids and all come in this home and use their points. And so we see a lot of that. And the other unique thing that we see, and people ask all the time, in particular equity analysts when I'm out in Wall Street doing that sort of thing. They wonder, they say, well, the average demographic of the timeshare owner tends to be a little higher. Do you have concerns about, the millennials buying the product, and is it the same, is it the right fit and that sort of thing? Well, what we see is we see, the baby boomer continuing to buy more product up into their 60s and 70s. Yeah, totally. But what they're doing is the product is in perpetuity, right? Yeah. So it comes in a willable fashion. So they may now have 5 grandkids, but they only have enough product, for 3 of them. So they'll buy more at 77 years old. And people are like, why are you doing that? Well, guess what? They're doing it so all 5 grandkids have the same thing. So it's pretty cool. Yeah,
that is definitely a wrinkle I hadn't considered. I would have thought they were buying more timeshare because they want to vacation more frequently and take their family with them when they could. I didn't connect it to a next generational gift kind of a scenario. That is really pretty cool and really interesting. What about the future of timeshare? You seem pretty up on these trends right now about how people are vacationing differently. Do you see more of that? Do you know what the next step might be? Where are we all headed from here? Are we going to just do virtual reality and stay at home and, or maybe I'll cash in my points, go to the Kauai property, put on the VR stuff and pretend I'm in Branson. I could do that.
There you go. Well, look, I would say the following. I mean, if you asked me to look into my crystal ball, my crystal ball would say that, people are taking shorter vacations but more vacations. So you got to have a product that allows for that. So if you're not, selling a points-based product today, you're certainly behind the curve. And then I would say that, from a commitment standpoint, there are people out there that, I think are more interested in maybe a 10 or 15 year product, versus a deeded product. I mean, if you go back, when I started in the business, or, you go talk to the majority of our owners, they would kill you if they thought that they couldn't, deed their product to their kids and, and live it, through their estate. I mean, that was one of the, and is one of the huge buying features, of the product. But if you really study the habits of the millennials, what it says is it says that they don't like commitments. I understand they want marriages they can get out of in 10 or 12 years. Yeah. So, if that really is the way it's going, I think we're all, going to have to look at maybe a shorter term product that maybe doesn't have a perpetuity feature, and you kind of have it out there for both.
Wow. Fascinating. Another idea I wouldn't have thought of, but then again, that's why you're in the timeshare business, and I just like talking about it. Mike, how about some shameless plugs for you?
Say that one more time.
How about giving me some shameless plugs? How can people find you? How can people connect with Diamond Resorts? All of that good stuff.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm Mike Flaskey, and you can follow me actually on Twitter at the Vacation DR, or Mike Flaskey, the Vacation Doctor. We're very progressive on social media at Diamond Resorts, and we have a very good presence there. DiamondResorts.com, is our website, and I encourage folks to go on there and play around and take a look at all of the amazing places that we have to vacation. And look, one of the things that I can assure your listeners, is that, if you are a Diamond Resorts owner or a Diamond Resorts guest, that, you've got 9,000 people waking up every single day making sure that you stay vacation when you're at one of our properties. And I'm very proud of our team and the hard work that they put in, and we have something very special here. So.
Excellent. I love it. I want to thank you so much for being here, Mike. And I want to thank everybody for listening today. You know where to find Mike at The Vacation Doctor. That's The Vacation DR. Check out DiamondResorts.com. And if you haven't followed me, well, you really should be. You know me. I'm at Traveling Glenn. And I want to thank you guys for listening. And I will be back next week. That is unless I decide to ditch this radio gig and start headlining in Branson, Missouri. See you guys next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.